What do you think is left on the table, given what you've heard now, both from Kayla in terms of her report, but also some of the comments that the Treasury Secretary made last night, I believe, to the New York Times?
I think a big problem still is the United States would like stronger enforcement mechanisms. The problem always with China is they'll say a lot, they'll make a lot of promises, but it's kind of difficult to see China follow through on them. I tend to think, though, that the enforcement mechanism may be somewhat strong in the words, but it's not going to be very enforceable because there's no international enforcement mechanism. On the other hand, Trump could threaten more tariffs to try to force China to do what the United States wants it to do. But I think the real question here is what's next. What's going to follow this trade agreement? I think there'll be one. There has to be one. It'll be within 5 or 6 weeks, I think, but there'll be an agreement.
But when you say what comes next, what do you think the permutations of what comes next could be?
Well, I think it's there will be an agreement. My friends in China tell me they very much want an agreement. They also, frankly, like President Trump pushing them. That is, I'm talking about the private sector in China. They love it that that Trump's trying to push China to open up and get more economic reform. On the other hand, when this is all concluded, there'll be some progress. The good news is it'll be over, and that reduces some uncertainty. The difficult problem is that some of the supply lines between our two countries have already been disrupted, and the longer these negotiations go on, if there's no agreement, American companies are going to start looking at other countries. They're going to look at Thailand. They're going to look at Vietnam. Not quite so much China. China knows that. China doesn't want that. But next problem is going to be Huawei. Next problem is going to be the Belt Road Initiative that you just discussed. There are going to be lots of issues that are going to come up with this relationship. This relationship is going to become more tense, not less.
So that's what I was going to ask. I mean, is this going to be, when an announcement of a deal is reached, is this mark the beginning of a new level of cooperation or a new level of something that looks very different?
I would not call it a new level of cooperation. I'd call it just another chapter in the relationship between the U.S. and China. It'll be somewhat positive because the agreement will be reached.
Right.
But all the other questions are going to we'll keep facing them. And the big problem is our two systems are so different. We're open, right. We're transparent, they're authoritarian. I mean, we Americans just don't quite understand the idea.
Ambassador, you mentioned Huawei.
Yeah.
What to do about Huawei? And there seems to be two issues when it relates to Huawei. One is a national security issue.
Right.
But there's a separate issue, which is simply about where the United States stands as a competitor, if you will, relative to how far ahead Huawei is when it comes to 5G technology.
Well, we've been asleep at the switch, frankly, and not developing 5G nearly to the degree that Huawei has. Second, the 5G that we're starting to develop is inferior to the 5G that Huawei is developing. Frankly, we got to get our act together. Some people ask, well, what's the Democrats' economic strategy going to be? The real question is, what's America's economic strategy going to be? We've got to build up America. It's the old infrastructure we keep talking about.
But
it's also the new
I talk to people in Silicon Valley that say we may be 3 to 5 years behind already.
Right.
So unless
exactly.
you're going to try to tie Huawei's hand behind its back through tariffs and all sorts of other things and claim national security issues when they may or may not be real to try to give some time to the U.S. companies to get there, I'm not sure you do.
I agree with that. And I think the UK is somewhat going in the right direction of trying to find some way to find an accommodation between those competing interests. I think a black and white Huawei is stupid. World's too complicated. We have to find ways to cut back doors, software that makes it more difficult to hack, allow Huawei in some parts of our economy, but not the most sensitive, like defense and security. There's always a way to skin a cat here, and I think we have to work very hard to find that solution.
So if we're having this conversation a couple years from now, you think that we're going to be talking about Huawei routers and other hardware all over the United States on our networks?
My view is we should not just stiff arm and totally close the door, because that's going to force Huawei, the Chinese, and other countries that are dealing with China, Huawei, to be more against us. we've got to find an accommodation. Maybe it's some routers, some servers in some locations. Not everywhere, not the most sensitive parts of America, but somewhere.
And just to be clear, you think of it as a national security issue, or you think of it as a competitive issue? You know, you listen to the CEO of Huawei, and he will say, till he is blue in the face, I'm not controlled by the Chinese government. They don't have a backdoor into my system. I don't do these things. I don't know what everybody's talking about.
Yeah, that's what he says. I think we have to take it with more than a few grains of salt. I think it's primarily a national security issue more than it's competitive. You know, we Americans think we like to compete. We think we can do better. So let's just compete and over time build a better product that's sold worldwide and deal with Huawei in a way that's safe for us.